What if you crashed on a planet where no man was allowed to live, and the land itself tried to kill you? But instead of death, the earth accepted you, chose you. In a world where ancient laws burn outsiders alive, one human survives, and awakens a secret buried for thousands of years, a forbidden bond, a sacred power, and a choice that could change two worlds forever. Stay with us. This is a story you'll never forget. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Taryn had never heard silence like this before. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the sky itself was holding its breath. His ship, once a smooth and shining vessel that flew across galaxies, now spun out of control. Sparks burst from the panels. Warning lights blinked in panic. Flames crawled across the glass of the cockpit like fingers trying to get in. Taryn tightened his grip on the controls and whispered, "Just hold together." But the ship didn't listen. The crash came like thunder. Metal tore like paper. Trees shattered. The ground itself seemed to scream as it opened beneath him. Then, nothing, just smoke, heat, and darkness. Taryn didn't remember crawling from the wreckage. He only remembered the pain. A sharp ache in his leg, blood seeping through the fabric of his suit, and strange purple leaves falling on his face. His helmet was cracked, but the air was surprisingly clean, too clean like it had never been breathed before. It smelled like cold fire and wild flowers. His breathing slowed, and he looked up at a sky that glowed with two suns. The forest around him shimmered. Every tree seemed to glow with a soft blue light. The bark sparkled like wet stone. Even the ground hummed under his boots. As he limped forward, the moss felt alive, almost watching him with every step. It was beautiful, but wrong. The kind of wrong that whispers when no one else is speaking. Then he saw it. A stone wall half buried in vines stood ahead. Words were carved deep into its face. "No man shall walk this land and live." Taryn stared. The message was old, but the letters were written in standard galactic script. His heart beat faster. Who had written this, and why? He moved closer, brushing the vines aside. Behind the wall were bones. Old bones. Human and alien. Burned and scattered. The message wasn't just a warning. It was a truth. Still, he kept walking. Something moved in the trees above him. Eyes blinked, in the shadows. Small creatures with curious stares vanished into the undergrowth. Others stayed still, watching. None attacked. None made a sound. That silence scared him more than anything else. His suit's AI was dead. No signal. No map. No help. He was alone. At least that's what he thought. Up in the branches, hidden among glowing leaves, a figure stood. She was tall and slender, covered in silver robes that shifted with the wind. Her skin shimmered softly, and her hair, long and dark, was tied with tiny glowing beads. Her eyes were deep violet and filled with something Taryn didn't expect. Fear, but also curiosity. He didn't see her. Not yet. But he felt her. The forest moved beneath him. A root shifted. His balance slipped. He fell hard. Pain exploded in his side and he coughed blood. That's when she stepped into the light. Quiet as a shadow. Her presence felt unreal, like a dream. She looked at him with wide eyes, cautious and careful. A glowing crystal floated above her palm. It pulsed red, then black. Her breath caught in her throat. "You should be dead," she said softly. Taryn blinked, too weak to reply. "Thanks for the warm welcome," he managed, his voice dry. She didn't smile. More figures appeared behind her. Women dressed the same. Some held staffs. Others had blades that shimmered like moonlight. They stared at Taryn like he was poison. "What do we do?" one asked. "End him now," said another. The first girl, still watching him, hesitated. "Not yet." They argued in a language he didn't understand, their voices sharp and fast. But he knew what they were debating, his life. He tried to sit up, groaning with effort. Blood soaked through his side. She stepped forward, raising her hand. Terran braced for death. Instead, she whispered a word he didn't recognize. The ground, beneath him, opened like a mouth. Glowing vines wrapped around his body, pulling him down. Not harshly, but like a lullaby. The world faded. When he opened his eyes, he was lying in a glowing cave. The walls were smooth and alive, humming with quiet light. His wounds were wrapped in soft plant fibers that gave off heat. Water dripped from somewhere nearby and the air smelled of salt and light. She was there, alone, watching him. "You don't belong here," she said. "I figured that out," Terran replied. "This land kills men," she continued. "Even alien ones. Your kind should not survive here." "But I did," he said. She studied him. Her expression was unreadable, part wonder, part fear. "Yes," she said quietly, "and that's what scares me." Terran didn't know what to say, so he looked at her instead. Her face was young, but her eyes were ancient, tired, yet still curious. He asked, "What is this place?" "This is Inara," she answered. "Our sacred world. No male has walked. Its surface in over 5,000 sun cycles. All who tried burned. Some call it a curse. Others call it justice. But I didn't burn." She nodded. "No, you didn't. Even the sacred stone accepted you. That's not supposed to happen." She reached into a pouch and handed him a small crystal. "Hold this." As soon as he touched it, the crystal glowed gold, bright, warm. She gasped. "It's not rejecting you," she whispered. "It's choosing you." And deep below the forest floor, something ancient stirred, something forgotten, something waiting. Terran didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. Sura stood in the shadows of the glowing trees, her heart racing. She had broken a law older than her own name. No outsider was allowed to live, let alone a male, but something about the crash survivor had frozen her hand when she should have raised her blade. She had watched him stumble through the forest, bleeding and lost. He wasn't a threat. He wasn't like the stories. The land had let him live, and the sacred crystal had glowed gold in his hand. That had never happened before. Now, in the stillness of night, she pulled a worn cloak over her silver robe and moved quickly through the forest. The vines parted for her. The roots shifted away. She carried Terran's unconscious body on a stretcher made from living bark and soft moss. He moaned quietly, fever burning through him, but he did not wake. She was taking him to the only place she knew would hide what shouldn't exist, a forgotten healing chamber deep beneath the soil, buried by time and fear. Few remembered the old places. The elders warned against them. Sura had found them by accident as a child, chasing a falling star through the trees. She had never spoken of it. But now that secret would save a life. And maybe more. The stone door opened at her touch. Warm air flowed out, carrying the scent of glowing herbs and damp earth. She dragged Terran inside, the roots curling shut behind her. Crystals lit up around the chamber, flickering like fireflies. At the center, she placed him on a bed of soft moss and wrapped his wounds in glowing plant fibers soaked in healing sap. His skin was pale, his breathing was shallow, but he was still alive. Sura sat beside him, watching. She had seen many things, as a guardian: storms of flame, beasts that moved like smoke, temples that sang without a voice. But never this. A male, touched by the curse, still breathing. The land had rejected every other outsider before, burned their bodies, shattered their minds, but not this one. The forest had let him pass. The crystal had lit up like dawn. What did it mean? She reached into her satchel and pulled out the crystal again. It was the same one she had used when she first found him. It usually turned black when near any male. But in his hand it had glowed gold. She placed it near him now. As his hand brushed the edge, it lit up once more, golden and steady. Sura stepped back, eyes wide. Her thoughts raced. The old story spoke of a bond between the sky and soil, a guardian from the stars who had walked the land long ago before the curse. The temples denied these stories now, calling them myths, but myths were often born from something real. Could this be that moment again? She had to know. She couldn't ask the elders. If they knew she had spared him, they would exile her, or worse. But there was one place she could go, an ancient temple buried beneath the roots of the mountain. Not the new one where the council ruled, but one older than laws, forgotten and feared. She stood, eyes on Terran's resting form. He looked peaceful now, fragile. Nothing like the fierce destroyers her people warned about. His legs still bled, but the healing roots pulsed gently around it. He would survive, she thought. Somehow he would. She whispered to him, though he couldn't. Here. I'll be back. Don't move, don't die. Then she slipped into the tunnels below the chamber, following the winding path only she remembered. The forest was quiet above her, not dead, listening. The old temple was covered in moss and dust. Its stone doors barely held together. She pushed them open with effort. Inside, time had stopped. Carvings lined the walls, glowing faintly with old power. She moved along them, brushing away vines and dirt. There it was, a mural of two figures. One, clearly human, with a wide stance and glowing hands. The other, a woman with eyes full of light and a curved blade. Between them, a golden sphere floated, shining like the sun. Sura's heart beat faster. The symbol above them was the same that had appeared in the crystal when Terran touched it. The same color, the same glow. The stories were real. The land had known him, chosen him. She returned to the chamber before sunrise. Terran stirred, eyes fluttering open. He looked confused but calm. "You came back," he said, voice rough. Sura nodded. "You're lucky," she whispered. "Or cursed," he said, trying to smile. She didn't smile back. Instead, she sat beside him again. "The land is changing," she said. "It's waking up." Terran stared at the glowing ceiling. "Because of me? Because of something old? Something you carry?" He didn't reply. He didn't have to. In the quiet, their eyes met. The soil had kept its secret for centuries. But now, with each breath Terran took, that secret was no longer buried. It had roots. It had light. And it had just begun to grow. Terran stood at the edge of the cave's mouth, looking out at the glowing forest beyond. The pain in his leg had faded, though a dull ache still pulsed with each movement. His strength was slowly returning, but his thoughts remained tangled. Nothing made sense. He had crashed on a world where no man should survive, yet he was alive. The land had not rejected him. The girl, Sura, had saved him. And the crystal, the strange floating stone she carried, had glowed gold in his hand. Every part of him told him this place should fear him, hate him. But something was different. Inside the cave, Sura sat by a quiet fire made from stones that shimmered when touched. She carved symbols into a smooth piece of wood, her face focused but tense. She hadn't spoken much since she returned from the old temple. Terran hadn't asked where she went, but he knew it had changed something in her. Her eyes were filled with questions she hadn't yet voiced. Far from the cave, someone else was asking questions of their own. Navi, a young seeker from the temple, had noticed Sura's absence. He had followed her once, days ago, but lost her trail. Now the forest whispered of movement and shadows. Navi trusted the silence more than most, and the silence had changed. It was tighter now, like something was being hidden beneath its stillness. Sura finally broke the quiet in the cave. "We don't have much time," she said. "You need to see something." She rose, tying the crystal around her wrist with a silver thread. Terran followed her without asking. They moved through the forest as softly as they could. Sura led the way, weaving between glowing roots and trees with leaves like falling stars. The forest made no sound, yet every step felt like walking through a dream. After some time, they reached a place deeper than the rest, where the trees grew twisted and close. At the center stood a stone structure, crumbled by time and covered in thick moss. Sura placed her hand on a small mark near the base. The stone glowed faintly and a doorway opened. They stepped inside. The room beyond was quiet, filled with carvings that pulsed with slow, steady light. Terran's breath caught as he looked at the walls. Figures were drawn in long lines, walking from stars down to the earth. One figure was human, unmistakably so, holding a sphere of light above his head. Next to him was a woman, eyes shining, her hand resting on his shoulder. The symbols above them were unlike anything Terran had seen before. But the glow, the shape, the feeling, it all matched the light from the crystal. Sura pointed to the center of the wall. "This is what I found," she said. "This story is not told anymore. The council calls it myth, but the land remembers." Terran walked closer. He reached out to touch the center symbol, the one shaped like the sphere. As his fingers brushed, the entire wall lit up. A pulse of warm gold spread through the room and the ground beneath them rumbled softly. Sura stepped back, her face pale. "It's the same light," she said. "Just like when you touched the crystal. Just like before." Terran looked at her. "What does it mean?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But this place, the stone, it reacts to you. The land accepts you even though you should be rejected. There's something old inside you. Something this place hasn't seen in a long time." They stood in silence, watching the glow slowly fade from the walls. Then the earth trembled again, this time stronger. Terran stumbled, catching himself against the stone. A distant sound echoed through the trees outside, metal striking stone. Footsteps. Slow, careful, but not alone. Sura's face tensed. "They're coming." "Who?" "A seeker. Maybe more." Terran nodded, already moving toward the exit. They slipped out of the ruin and into the forest, the doorway closing silently behind them. Sura moved quickly, guiding him along paths she knew only by memory. Terran limped behind her, pain flaring again in his leg. Still, he didn't stop. Behind them, Navi stepped into the ruin. He had followed the trail, slow and patient. Now he saw the carvings, the glow still fading from the walls. His eyes narrowed. Sura had found something dangerous. He turned back into the forest, his message ready. Meanwhile, Sura and Terran kept running. The forest seemed to shift with them, paths opening and closing as they moved. Sura's heart pounded. She had broken every rule, hit a stranger, entered the forbidden temple. And now, the signs of something ancient were rising around them. If the council learned what she had done, they would punish her. If they discovered Terran, they would destroy him. But she couldn't go back. She had seen too much. And she knew something now, something that lived in her chest like a second heartbeat. The stories weren't lies. The curse wasn't simple. There was a sign in the stone, and it had answered only to him. As night fell, they found shelter beneath a giant tree with roots that twisted like ropes. Sura placed her hand on one and whispered to it. A small hollow, open, just large enough for them to hide. They slipped inside, breath shallow. Outside, the forest watched. Inside, the truth waited. The forest was darker than before. Even the glowing leaves seemed dimmer, as if the trees were holding their light in silence. Inside the hollow beneath the great tree, Sura and Terran sat close, listening to the night. The ground above them pulsed softly, a slow heartbeat of the planet itself. Neither spoke for a long time. They could feel it. Something was changing. The land was no longer just watching. It was preparing. Terran leaned against the tree wall, tired but alert. His body still ached, but his mind was clearer than ever. The signs were no longer just strange events. They meant something. The glow in the crystal, the light in the temple, the carvings on the stone. All of it pointed to something inside him. Something old and waiting. He looked at Sura, who was staring at the ground, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "You should have left me," he said quietly. Sura shook her head. "I tried. But the land didn't." He smiled faintly. "Still, you risked everything." Sura looked up, her eyes sharp. "So did you, when you walked through the forest. When you trusted me. We're both past the point of turning back now." Above them, a soft vibration passed through the soil. It was steady, like a drumbeat, slow but rising. Sura stood suddenly. "They're getting closer." Taryn's heart skipped. "The Seekers?" She nodded. "If they find you, they won't ask questions. They'll destroy you, and I'll be punished for helping you." Taryn stood slower, using the wall for balance. "Then we keep moving." "No," Sura said. "Running isn't enough anymore." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with decision. "There's only one place left, one truth left to face." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "There's a chamber beneath the heart of the mountain," she said. "It's where the first guardians were chosen, where the land itself speaks. No one has entered it for thousands of cycles, but I think it's waiting for you." Taryn didn't understand, but he nodded anyway. "Then let's go." The journey was hard. The forest shifted around them like it was listening. Branches bent in strange ways. Roots opened paths and closed others. The deeper they went, the older everything felt. The trees were taller here, and the ground sparkled faintly beneath their feet. Birds with glowing feathers circled above in silence. At last, they reached the base of the mountain. It didn't look like much, just a cliff covered in thick vines. But Sura walked forward with purpose. She placed both hands on the stone and spoke a single word. The vines pulled back and a narrow opening appeared, leading into the dark. They stepped inside together. The passage was cold and dry. The air tasted like dust and memories. The walls glowed with symbols Taryn couldn't read, but they felt familiar. They followed the tunnel until it opened into a vast chamber filled with soft golden light. At the center was a stone platform. Floating above it was a sphere, glowing gently like the morning sun. It hummed with quiet energy. Sura stepped aside. "This is where it begins," she said. "If the land truly accepts you, the sphere will respond. If not..." Taryn didn't ask what would happen. He already knew. He stepped forward, heart pounding. The sphere pulsed faster as he got closer. He reached out a hand, unsure if it was fear or instinct guiding him. The moment his fingers touched the light, the chamber lit up. The floor glowed. The walls shone. The air itself seemed to sing. Sura gasped. The sphere wrapped his hand in gold and lifted slightly, spinning slowly. Lines of light reached from it to the carvings on the walls. They moved, alive with motion, telling a story neither of them had ever seen. The story of a protector from the stars, chosen by the land to stand between two worlds. A guardian born not of this soil, but accepted by it. The one who would bring balance, not by force, but by bond. When the light faded, Taryn stood frozen. The sphere lowered and rested calmly beside him. Sura stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. "You're the one in the story, the protector, the bond." Taryn turned to her, eyes wide. "But why me?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "But the land chose. And now the council will want answers." A new sound rose outside. Footsteps. Voices. The seekers had arrived. The choice could no longer be hidden. Taryn and Sura stepped out of the chamber as Navi and two others approached. Weapons drawn, faces hard. "Step back," Navi shouted. "He is not welcome here." But the ground beneath their feet glowed again. The same light that had filled the chamber rose around Taryn. The seekers stopped, confused. Sura raised her hand. "The land has spoken," she said clearly. "He is not the enemy. He is the answer." There was silence. Then, to everyone's surprise, the oldest tree near the cliff began to bloom. flowers opening in golden light for the first time in generations. The land had given its reply. The seekers did not lower their weapons, but they did not move forward. Navi's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in thought. Something had changed, something none of them could deny. That night, Terran stood at the edge of the forest looking out at the stars above. Sura stood beside him. Neither spoke for a while. The wind carried the scent of flowers and soil, ancient and new. "You don't have to stay," she said softly. "I think I do," he replied. She nodded. "Then we begin again." And so they did. Not as stranger and guide, not as intruder and protector, but as the chosen and the choice.